Hello, you wonderful people, and welcome to another episode of Crime Centric. This being a show where I talk about crime dramas that I watch. For today's episode, I'm going to talk about the latest episode of Lincoln Rhyme Hunt for the Bone Collector. Side note, going forward, I'm probably just going to say Lincoln Rhyme just by itself, and that's probably just how I'm going to titling these two. But regardless, that's not neither here nor there. A lot of interesting things went down in this episode, so let's break it down. Obviously, our team, this is their first case together, this episode. Well, it's interesting because there's actually something I actually completely forgot to talk about in the last episode. I didn't think about it until well after the recording was already uploaded and everything. But it was obviously Lincoln wiggling his toes at the very end, and obviously there's still a little bit of that. Obviously, you have Claire being worried that basically jumping right into this, and the fact that the stress and all that of kind of the what it takes for this job, working cases like this, like the fact that she was worried it might undo all the progress he made, because obviously it seems like it's been I think it was almost 2 weeks or whatever, so it seems like that's all he could do for now. But for him, it's just it's almost like he wasn't trying to get his hopes up either, but he was also trying to push himself to be giving enough, because it seems like he's still kind of in his mind that, hey, I will never walk again, even though, hey, I can wiggle my toe, but it's that's such a temporary thing that he doesn't even want to even fathom thinking oh, maybe I get full mobility back. That's not even something he's really thinking about. But I think he's trying to not be hopeful, but there is still that spark of hope. But obviously, this new case includes a serial killer that has been active previously, known as the Wrath of the Gods. Basically, they kill people and using paintings and representations of basically punishments of the gods as a means of killing. The first victim, her name was it Daphne? Or Delilah. She was killed reminiscent of someone named Narcissus, who was basically they're mirror images of these Greek related things, mortals that were killed and punished by the gods. This particular person, obviously, as the name implies, filtered from narcissism, because she was, because Narcissus, what was it that Lincoln was saying, basically drowned because they couldn't stop looking at their own reflection. So, and obviously this is a hard thing. Like I said, this is, Amelia's first full case working with the team. Obviously last episode as well, but this is more so now it's more official and everything. And obviously it's a rough thing. She didn't say anything about it, but I would have thought seeing Delilah like that was probably rough, because that's literally how her sister was positioned to die last episode, was by drowning. So I would assume that would but I think it's still just obviously she's never been around a lot of crime scenes, because the thing is last episode, these were brutal murders by drowning. So like I said, I kind of get the feeling that. Then there's the other dude who got burned alive, It's those are things she's not used to. She's a cop and everything, but these type of murders aren't something she's used to. Even though she only dealt with one murder last episode, because luckily they were able to get to the second victim in time, but it's and then obviously later she was able to get to the third victim, her sister, in time. But first of all, the whole it was messed up, but it wasn't as graphic, I think, and she doesn't have to be as close to the bodies this episode as she's a lot closer to the bodies this episode than she was last episode. Is kind of what I'm trying to getting at. So it kind of hits her a little differently. And like I said, obviously she had to get readjusted to the fact of oh yeah, being kind of Lincoln's, as she says later on, his arms and legs. And the fact of the matter is kind of, checking out the crime scene. Obviously because, for her, she's she wants to come at it from a, what's the word? It's what they do in Criminal Minds. Profiler, which I should also say the blacklist, because that's Elizabeth's thing. She was a profiler and everything, but that's what obviously that's what Amelia is training to be. That's what she wanted to go to the FBI for. So for her, it's oh, we need to profile the killer first, and that might help us. But obviously Lincoln's no, follow the evidence. That's going to get us to the killer. You can because profiling is taking all these pieces and trying to get an image or understanding of who the killer is. But it's just follow the evidence. Let that be our guy, because that's a faster shoot there towards the killer rather than profiling. At least that's how his mindset. But she's yeah, I get it. Anyone can literally fill this position of being your arms and legs. But the fact of the matter is, this arms and legs also has a brain. But for him, it's this. You got to understand, this is my team. You are part of it. But it is my team. But the fact is, he's I picked you because I don't want you just to be my arms and legs, because you bring something that you can do something no one else can do. But obviously, it's still kind of something she has to get used to. And Lincoln's calling, and Toledo's like, you could just like ignore him. It's like, it's like putting God, like putting God on mute, which is interesting. Obviously, like this episode, I think the title of this episode is God Complex. So literally everything going on with this episode and the killer and everything, but also just Lincoln and himself having somewhat of a God complex. And then the whole thing of like him being a God almost because like he can almost like hear everything you're saying just because of the mic and everything, the camera and the mic. So it all kind of like fits together in the confines of the episode and everything. I'd seen the name Ian Coletti during the opening credits. So I was like, why does that name seem so familiar? Maybe it's something I saw somewhere else. And then I saw a picture of David, and it was like, Ian Coletti, right? Eugene from Preacher. Eugene, aka R-Space, but obviously like R-Space was never, I don't know if he was ever called that in the comic books, like consistently. I just know that was his name. Regardless, I'm going on a tangent, but I was like, oh, dude. And it's kind of weird because this is one of the few times I'm used to hearing his natural voice. Because obviously, with Preacher, he had to wear like makeup and prosthetics for his like bottom of his face, so his voice was messed up a lot. Because you get what I'm trying to say. Once again, I'm going on a tangent and stuff like that. But it turns out David is an ex-victim. It turns out that David was actually the child of one of the previous victims of the Wrath of Gods, because it turns out like he was like 7 years old at the time, and he saw the killer kill his mom, which obviously Amelia has a personal connection in this regard, because obviously we learned about it last episode of what happened to her parents, so she can understand but for her it's like the way her mind works because of the whole fragment things, and it's not just her mind but anyone in a particular situation of witnessing something traumatic like that are able to kind of have some fragments. So Amelia was saying like, go to David. The fact is maybe he could be the key to kind of figuring this out, because maybe he remembers something that he doesn't quite know that he remembers. It's kind of like the whole point. But luckily they were able to get to him that time. But at the same time, like the killer had started a live stream, so it's like the killer was already there. So I even thought this was an interesting element of like Amelia wanted to kind of like use herself as to go after the killer, but like Lincoln was like, no, don't do that. And she was like, come on, you're talking to the girl who jumped in front of a train, so like what's a killer with a gun gonna really, So I thought that was interesting, and Lincoln was kind of like, okay. But I think because he does that twice in the episode, because like she wants to go look for the killer later on, and it's like, take Salida with you. I think it's because it's a combination of he doesn't want him bringing her into this end up leading to her getting killed or in a condition much like himself. I think because obviously he didn't wait for backup and he went alone, and that's why he fell into the trap he did. So I think that probably has been racing through Lincoln's mind for the past 3 years. So he doesn't want her to kind of go off by herself, because it's like she's like, would you rather me go or would you want Salido to go? And she's like, I'd rather both of you go. So I just that's something to kind of keep in mind, that even though like he seems like he's kind like Lincoln can come off a little bit arrogant and kind of a bit of an asshole in the grand scheme of things. I even love, because we learned from Felix that the fact of the matter is like what David's mom was supposed to represent is Icarus flew too close to the sun because she indulged. She flew too close to the sun and came crashing down into the sea. And he's like, that's why I don't get on planes. And he's like, wait, that's why you don't like to fly, because of a myth? And he was like, yeah, I thought we've been working together all these years, and you don't know that about me? He's like, I know. I forgot what it was that Lincoln said. He's like, this and this. I forgot what it was he said Felix does, but he's like, oh, you do this and this. And that was enough personal information for me. He was like, I also do origami too. So that was interesting, but it also shows you like how, Lincoln doesn't get too close to many people. It's actually interesting because, like, obviously, Lincoln was kind of getting on her about, like, the body and everything. It's like, keep looking for evidence when it came to the second victim's room and everything. And Salito's like, all right, turn off the camera. And then she turns it off. And so I like Salito being like, all right, so the fact is, you want to know what it's like, what it takes to kind of work with Lincoln, right? The fact of the matter is, never repeat that I said this, but he likes to think he's smarter than everyone, but the fact is he actually is on most occasions. And I liked how Salito put it, like, when it comes to a lot of stuff, he's actually extremely smart. He knows more than us, but the fact of it, and he said something interesting where it's like, but Lincoln is the way he is because he cares too much. He puts his all into a case, and the fact of the matter is, but because of that, he does have his blind spots, that he doesn't see the trees in the forest because he's so focused on kind of maybe like this and that certain details might not slip by him, that others might have to kind of fill in those gaps. It's like anime reference, well, anime/manga reference. It's like the Byakugan. It has a 360-degree vision cone, and when in actuality it doesn't. It actually has 359 degrees because there's a 1 degree blind spot. That's what Lincoln is, and it's actually a very apt description with the whole Byakugan situation. But regardless, because Lincoln can see what people don't, just the way his mind works and everything like that. But besides all of that, obviously Lincoln wasn't too happy about her turning, the camera off and everything, kind of talking about, like, obviously their partnership and everything. And I like her being like, the fact is, I want you to treat me more like a colleague and not a tool. And he's like, you've seen how I treat my colleagues. And she was like, fair point. It's like, honestly, it's sad. It's a sad thing to say, kind of like him treating you more like equipment is actually probably better than him treating you like a colleague. And it does seem like, in the grand scheme of things, it does seem like he kind of treats Amelia better than he does anyone else. Because, like, let's not forget, like, for Eric, didn't even know, kept messing up his name, mainly on purpose. But he's never done that with Amelia, of course. So it's just an interesting dichotomy, I guess, would be the word I'm trying to look for. There was another word, but that's what kind of ended up flying out my mouth, regardless. But it's interesting because obviously throughout the case, they meet two different people. At first, they meet the artist who painted this stuff, and he was acting a little shady because it's like, well, I don't remember, like, oh, it was years ago I sold all these paintings and stuff like that. It's like, I feel like you wouldn't take note of whoever it was that bought your paintings, but it's like, well, the killer went live while they were talking to the artist, so it couldn't have been him. But then later on, they talked to a lady, her name's Irene, and about the murders and everything, because of, like, what she teaches at schools, and basically she takes the same thing of, like, basically everything that's wrong with the world, but she uses kind of like mythology, in particular like the Greek mythologies, as a parallel. Because even like what's his name, Carlton, I think is the painter's name. That the fact is that he does the same thing of kind of being like talking about, like, there's so much that Greek mythologies can, like, there are parallels, that they are still relevant. Those stories that the Greeks made up then to kind of, parallel what they were going through still apply all this time later in this world, representing love, loss, lust, darkness, death, all that type of stuff. But obviously it seems like Irene would be the good candidate, but at the same time they were talking to her, it turns out that David's girlfriend Allie was kidnapped, so it's like it couldn't have been her. But then Lincoln puts it together of like, maybe it's because they were working together. It's like, oh, so this is like, they feed off of each other's psychopathy. Like, he kind of represent, like, because he was kind of a student or whatever, so it's like he kind of like, her lessons and her way of viewing things kind of fed into like this, I wouldn't say delusion, but like the way he kind of views things. And like, she's proud because it's like, oh, look at the paintings that he does that kind of represent. So I think it's like, we don't know how much, well, because the fact of the matter is, I'm about to say, because like, we don't know how hands-on she was with a lot of killings, but it's like, right, Carlton was there when the second victim was dying. So it's like, it's not like she was ever hands-off. She was very hands-on to it. Like, they fed into each other and they kind of found each other throughout all of this, which is kind of super messed up in the grand scheme of things. But obviously they're trying to save out because once again, Lincoln kind of piecing stuff together because of what was found at the crime scene of like Allie being taken. And I'll get to it soon enough, but like the parallels that kind of has, like, for the bone collector, I think is kind of interesting. But like, there was evidence left behind, and Lincoln kind of pieced it together, and it's like stained glass. It's like because it's like some paint stuff, but also like glass, and it's like, right, stained glass you can only find in churches. And he remembers like a particular church where a person had, like, in the past would preach a lot about hell, because most churches preach about heaven, of like going to heaven, doing good deeds and stuff like that. But someone's like, oh, you don't do good, you're going to hell, like the more opposite side of things. And luckily they were able to find the church and everything. But it led to a confrontation between Amelia and Carlton, and luckily she stopped them. And it's obviously what he was planning to do to Allie ended up happening to him, so it almost seemed poetic in a sense. I know that could be a little morose and morbid, but it was almost poetic. What he was trying to do to her ended up getting done to him, and what he was literally trying to do to Amelia. So luckily they were able to save her. And because I skipped over it, but like, because Amelia talks about this later on, that because David didn't realize he was remembering stuff because he had dreams and stuff like that, but he didn't realize like the dreams he was actually having were memories. And at first it seems like, oh, that's why the killer came after him, because even though David talked about the fact that he doesn't remember much, the dreams he had was his like his mind was protecting itself from the trauma. But like even then, your mind tries to process things in different ways, and to kind of compensate for not being able to access it himself, his subconscious was dream wise. So, but and Amelia's talking about when you go through something like that, you process it, you handle it in whatever way you can. So, and I think Amelia's still, she spent probably a lot of her life figuring it out, and I think she's still, in a way, figuring it out. I don't think that's something you ever really 100%, having something like that happen to you in front of you, both in David's case and her case. It's something that kind of follows you everywhere, I think. But you still kind of have to, I think, even throughout the rest of your life, you still have to kind of figure that out. So. But I liked what also kind of another aspect to this whole Lincoln and Amelia situation is like, she's like, like how he, like luckily everything worked out the way Amelia handled it, but she's like, well, how would you handle it? He's like, this isn't about how I would handle it. Like the fact is like I said, just Lincoln was worried about her. But I like what he was saying. Like, the fact is, like, us work together and be better than both of us. And not let it be like because there's flaws in how either way, how I would have handled it, how you handle it. So let's be together and let's compensate and be better than how either one of us can handle it. So kind of bringing a more equal partnership to their approach to all this. And I thought that was kind of a neat element to this whole situation. So, like I said, first official case, it was kind of a doozy. So it does seem like they're probably going forward. They are probably going to deal more so with serial killers, because even Lincoln himself had actually talked about the fact is that he had actually gotten some files together of like some cases that were already kind of interested in him, but probably there's going to be new cases coming their way. So it's probably going to be either newborn serial killers or old case serial killers that were just never caught. Maybe it won't necessarily be just serial killers. I'm sure like there might be, I don't know if there's going to be a serial aspect, whether it's like serial arsonist or serial kidnapper or whatever the case may be. But I feel like serial killers are probably going to be like more so like kind of their niche, the ones that kind of slip through and everything like that. So, but obviously it seems like Lincoln's place is going to be more so the lab and everything. Obviously Kate bringing her systems and stuff like that. It's actually pretty interesting, like, because it seems like could both of them kind of represent kind of like the technology side of things, but she's more so like obviously the forensic science behind everything, whereas Felix is the actual kind of like, because like for Kate, she was the one that actually came up with like, all right, recognizing like in Carlton's paintings, because he even tried to be like, oh, my work, it's I never do the same thing. That right there seems so arrogant, like, oh, I never do the same thing, so I blah, blah, blah. It's like, all right, dude. But it's just because it's like they recognize, like, because basically he has an artistic fingerprint, certain swirls, certain like aspects of his painting, and like they were kind of reflected in a lot of his paintings. All they had to do was run it through a system to kind of find out. But it's neat that they have a little lab here, the kind of, the squad and everything. So I think that's, pretty neat. So, but other than that, I did like the parallels that were being, like, because obviously, like, the bone collector's doing his work, obviously trying to keep his wife from knowing what he's working on, because it does seem like subsequently, since he kind of stopped all this, like, because she's like, oh, because she thinks he's doing whatever work he's doing, and she's like, I'm so glad to see you kind of throwing yourself back into your work. I guess I'm curious, is he happier now? Because that's going to be like the sick and twisted thing of like, oh, like he was just kind of going through the motions, but now she's like, oh, I'm happy to see you kind of throwing yourself into your work, because I guess he was just kind of laying about, just kind of well, maybe because he no longer had the quote unquote inspiration, but now he does, because last episode kind of inspired him to kind of get back into the game and everything. But obviously, like, Lincoln had said, like, there are small little mistakes that Lee can there's always going to be like little evidence left behind that could be make or break of a case. And while they literally cut to the bone collector dealing with the bone and everything, and like an eyelash or a hair, it looked like it was an eyelash, ended up, or maybe it was even an eyebrow. I'm pretty sure it was an eyelash. Regardless, I'm getting caught up in it. There was a hair that fell into the bone, and it's like, oh, did he slip up? And he's about to wrap up the bone, and he sees it and he picks it up. I was like, okay, got to be very meticulous. But it is like even the smallest detail like that would have been enough to catch him. So I'm curious, like, what the full scale of everything is, because he's draining that dude's body of blood. It's not just the bone thing, because when we find out later on, he didn't just send one bone, he sent 2 bones. I wonder, did he send to everyone on the crew? I'm sure it was more so towards Lincoln and Amelia, because he recognizes, like, Amelia's part to play in all this. So for him, he's including her in this lone game that's existed between Lincoln and the Bone Collector. But I thought it was interesting how India. But like I said, I'm curious. I guess that's going to be another part in all of this is draining the body. But I'm wondering, is that more so he can transport it? Maybe it's like he's draining the body of blood, so when he slices it up, there isn't any blood. Like maybe that's kind of what he's aiming for. I don't know. Because he was draining blood at the end of the last episode too, so that's why I'm curious. Like it must be so you can transport the body without having to worry about cleaning up blood, because cleaning up blood still leaves evidence of like, oh yeah, bleach was here, that type of situation. I'd say that only picking up stuff from like all the different crime dramas I watch. So, but regardless, he sent a message to Amelia and Lincoln, who his total situation has gone away, but like I said, for him it's just kind of like he's going to start up like the next morning like his therapy and stuff, his physical therapy and stuff like that. So, but getting this message from the Bone Collector, it was always a thought like, hey, he's out there still somewhere, but now he's personally reached out to both Lincoln, and obviously this case is very personal to him. So, and it's something that everyone kept telling. It's like Amelia said it, and even Felix has said it. Like, oh, we'll catch this particular killer, the Wrath of Gods, but we'll also get the Bone Collector. And Lincoln's kind of got this because I think it's just a constant reminder of that bastard's out there. And Lincoln actually skipped over it. Lincoln had this really nice moment with Amelia, like, because she was like, do you really want to just kind of start jumping right back into this? And for him, it's like the Bone Collector didn't just take away like my arms and my mobility. He took away what this job meant to me. And like, I stopped doing this so long because of what the Bone Collector. So it's like, I've let him win for too long. I'm getting back into this because it's like, it's like, and he even told Amelia this, like, yeah, you're going to see a lot of terrible things during this job, some even worse than what we've seen in this episode. But the fact of the matter is, know that working with me, we can and we will save people, So it's just kind of an interesting thing. So, but it's definitely going to be interesting to see where all this ends up taking us going forward into the next episode. But really, that's all I want to talk about. Until the next time we meet, be happy, be safe, live life to the fullest, and enjoy it. Good day and goodbye.